Hello, welcome to a year-end edition of what we're calling The World Next Year, a sample of the stories we'll be following on the show in 2013. With us, Craig Kapitas of Quartz in the Atlantic. How are you, sir?
Okay.
Also with us, Christopher Dickey of Newsweek and The Daily Beast, Anne Penkint of The Independent, and Hamdan Mustafavi of Courrier International. I see you've brought along some reading. Show us what you got.
It's The World in 2013.
Le Monde en 2013, The World in 2013, published in coordination between Courrier International and The Economist. Okay. The World Next Year, you can find us on The World This Week's Facebook page and on Twitter, our hashtag TWTW. Now, to look forward, let's begin by looking back. Before there was an Arab Spring, there was 2009. Iran's so-called Green Revolution and its rallying cry of "Where's my vote?" A leaderless, social network-driven protest groundswell sparked by the contested re-election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. The country's ruling clerics have not yet signaled who they prefer to succeed Ahmadinejad, who bows out in June because of term limits. But Hamdan Mustafavi, it's pretty clear 2013 will not be a repeat of 2009.
No, I don't think so. There's no signs of that. And there have been intensive repression these last 4 years on any form of activist that you can find in Iran. So I don't think there will be an uprising like there was 4 years ago. And on the presidential level, what we are sure of is that it won't be somebody like Ahmadinejad. It will be a more low-profile figure that will bring the presidency, because Khamenei has been, the supreme leader, has been bored with the fuss around Ahmadinejad and his clan, which is a kind of...
It's a mixed bag, isn't it, Iran? Because on the one hand, the clerics have the power, but you do have institutions.
Yeah, we do.
So it's...
No, it's... Well, the real power is in the clerics' hand, that is sure. But there are also the Pazaran, which are the military, who also have a great power. More and more, these last 8 years, they've been gaining power in the economy, in the energy sector, in the nuclear and stuff. So, Ahmadinejad had some power, but I think the next president will have a lot less power than Ahmadinejad had.
Christopher Dickey?
I think Iran is just incredibly hard to read, because none of those groups are monolithic. The clergy are not at all monolithic. There are lots of divisions within the clergy. There are lots of divisions within the Pazaran, the Revolutionary Guards. Parliament has lots of divisions. And all these people are moving around and over and through each other politically in ways that are often very hard to read. One month you'll be reading that Ahmadinejad is ascendant, that he will pick his own heir. The next month you read that really it's Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. And it's very hard to know from day to day. But I agree with Hamdan. I don't think we're going to see anything like the 2009 Green Revolution. What we're going to see is a lot of maneuvering among these factions. It's almost like Elizabethan politics. It's all court intrigues.
But the most important thing is that it doesn't change. None of them wants to abolish the regime and try something new. Even 4 years ago, Mousavi and Karoubi didn't want a regime change. So in some way, it doesn't...
They wanted to reform from within.
Yeah. So.
Ahmadinejad's legacy unclear in a country where, as you were saying, many of the shots are called by clerics, not by the civilians. His last performance at the UN General Assembly included all the standard phrases, lacked some of the provocative vitriol of past years. No, it certainly wasn't Ahmadinejad who stole the show.
A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment necessary to make a bomb.
Now, there's somebody else who's up for re-election, Craig Kapitas.
Yeah, well, he's probably going to win. Every time you see Netanyahu or any of the Hezbollah leaders or whoever the leader du jour is, it's just, would you people please stop bickering? This has been going on long enough. I'm at wit's end over trying to make sense
But to
of this,
but further to that diagram about the bomb, Iran's bomb.
Well, it was a nice show and tell. He got the message across. Is anyone going to do anything to stop the mullahs of Persia from developing their bomb? I don't think so. I think that, the question, if you're referring specifically to this question of Netanyahu with his Iranian nuclear bomb, the question I have is when is the so-called Arab Spring going to turn into the Persian Spring? Every story I read about Iran, every story, it tells me how the vast majority of people are under the age of 30, and even more are under the age of 25, and that they love, rap music, and they love their MTV and everything else. But they continue to let these hardliners, who Chris rightly describes as this Elizabethan court, run the country. I basically have a question here. When is the Iranian youth going to do something about this?
They already did in some way.
Well,
4 years ago.
I must have slept through
it. But the
it.
country is more divided than you see. Of course, there are people who love rap music, but there are also a lot of young people who are in the Basijis, the militias, who some of the poor section who benefit from the regime. There are many people who benefit from it. So you can have young people who want to go to America and want to listen to rock music and stuff, but it's a divided country. It's not happening.
So does this mean there's going to be, that next year we're going to see a bomb?
And the most important thing is that they have the legacy of their parents. It's not like in Egypt or some other place where there hasn't been a revolution in I don't know how many years. In Iran, there has been a revolution 33 years ago, and it's still very in everybody's head. So, and what happened 3 years ago doesn't make people feel like going to the streets again.
And Penkett?
Well, I think on the nuclear issue, first of all, I think that Netanyahu, he's in danger of losing his credibility on this, actually. He's just cried wolf once too often, and he was rightly slapped down by the Obama administration on this issue of a red line. That said, it's true that none of these incredibly tight economic sanctions have forced Iran to hold their hand up and say, "Uncle." Is there going to be a war inevitably on Iran? Any policymaker knows that a war on Iran is actually going to be counterproductive and at best would only delay the program.
All right.
And Netanyahu will be reelected.
Certainly, yes. Iranians are feeling the pinch of sanctions. Back in October, money changers at Tehran's main bazaar clashed with police, angry at the time when their currency suddenly nosedived, losing 60% of value on the black market. At the same time, the Iranian foreign minister hinted it could soon be time to sit down again and talk about the country's nuclear program. Last week, the U.S. State Department said the ball was, quote, in Iran's court. Is it a good time to talk, Christopher Dickey?
It's always a good time to talk when you're talking about nuclear weapons and trying to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. I don't want to say that I sympathize with Netanyahu, because I certainly do not. And I think a war would be an unmitigated disaster. But you can see how he wants to cut through all this stuff, because you don't know, for the same reasons we were talking about earlier, you don't really know who you're dealing with in Iran on the nuclear issue. They appoint different people. There are different political currents that dominate the nuclear issue from one time to another. You think you've got a deal, and then the deal falls apart because of politics inside Iran. And at the same time, the nuclear clock just keeps ticking. And I think we are going to hit the crunch sometime this year. And the question is, if you're going to pursue a diplomatic course, which is a reasonable one and which sanctions are part of, who do you pursue it with? And are the Iranians really willing to talk about it? If Khamenei is the supreme leader and he wants to make a deal and can make a deal, then for God's sake, let's make a deal.
All right, and there's another variable on Iran's bargaining position. It's called Syria. Iran has openly said it has special forces helping the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Last month, as Moscow's backing of Damascus showed the first signs of wavering, the Speaker of Iran's parliament visited Damascus. And each week, Friday prayers in Tehran, you hear, well, an unequivocal tone.
The arrogant government of America explicitly recognizes the murderers of the Syrian people under the name of the opposition coalition as the legitimate representatives of the Syrian people. This is a violation of all international laws.
Hamdan Mustafavi, what happens if Assad falls in Syria? Where does that leave the Iranians?
Alone, really. Around them, they don't have so many friends anymore, so it will be a great defeat for Iran if Syria falls, but that's not happening today.
Well, they'll always have Iraq, thanks to the United States.
Yeah, thanks to them. But back on, I think it's important to talk with the Iranians, but I don't think, unless you really change the terms of the discussions, that there's a way to stop them from what they're pursuing now, because they don't like to be bullied like a third world country. They like to be talked to like real partners. So I think that's maybe the only way it's going to change.
And Pankit, how does Syria change Iran's position in your view?
I would agree with Hamdan on that. Of course, they've still got Hezbollah. They've still got Hamastan, as the Israelis call Gaza. You know, they've still got their various proxies out there.
North Korea.
You know, I mean, the Syrian situation, this is the real crucible of the Middle East, Syria right now. And I think we talk about it as if Assad falls and then things stop. But that's not what happens. Assad falls, then you have more internal conflict in Syria. You probably have an expansion of the civil war. You have a real danger that the jihadis who were in Iraq, who went and fought in Syria, will then feel, and perhaps rightly so, that they played a major role bringing down Assad, and then we'll go back to Iraq and renew the war there. I think there's a very good chance that we'll see a renewed civil war in Iraq, and probably a three-way civil war: Kurds versus Baghdad, and also Sunni versus Shia. And Syria will make all of that infinitely worse. It will leave Iran isolated, but it will leave the Middle East in chaos.
You say that, but Craig Kapitas was tearing his hair out a minute ago over the fact that the Israelis and Palestinians never ever seem to sit down properly. The head of Hamas...
I did that ages ago, tore my head out.
The head of Hamas moving his postal address from Damascus to Cairo and effectively severing all ties with Iran.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood does not love Iran, and Iran does not love the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a Sunni Shia thing. It's also just a question of political organization and competition. Hamas is an extension of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not a natural extension of the mullahs. It just needed money and resources, and it wasn't getting them anywhere else in the era of pro-Western dictators. Now it can find resources and support from Cairo. So of course it goes there. Cairo's next door, and it's the same political party. That's another way in which Iran will find itself isolated. I don't think Hamastan is going to be very long in Tehran's camp.
All right, we're going to move on and look at another part of the world and ask, will it be change or continuity in China? After the once-in-a-decade changing of the guard at the top, the new Communist Party leader Xi Jinping's scheduled to take over the presidency in March. Already, the son of a revolutionary guerrilla who studied for a short while in the U.S. seems raring to go. He's promised economic reform, a crackdown on corruption, and a China with more muscle on the world stage.
You must bear in mind that being able to wage war and win in combat is key to building a strong armed forces. The entire military must build and prepare itself according to war requirements.
Craig Kapitas' remarks made while visiting a naval base, and this, of course, in the context of that dispute with Japan over those islands.
Yeah, you're going to see continuity in China, and you're going to see the continuity marching forth by the Chinese with their checkbooks in hand. They're going to be, this next year, they're going to be buying into more and more Western corporations, principally in the United States. They've already started this with certain units of AIG, the bankrupt insurance company in the U.S. You're going to see them purchasing more land in the West. Their investments in China are off the charts, as we know, and there's going to be future investments. China everyone all focus on, oh, they're building a military, they're building ships because, you know, America's fearful that the Chinese are going to come and, you know, drink out of the Ohio River someday. Well, that's not going to happen. They might own the Ohio River. China's got the checkbook. They don't need troops. They have dollars. And their currency is going to emerge next year as a major league factor.
All right, you say that, but it's not just the East China Sea. China's been picking a fight, it seems, or if you look at it the other way around, the others have been picking a fight with them, with the Vietnamese, the Filipinos, over claims to islands further south. You see the red dot there on that map. Those are what China claims are its territorial waters. It looks like muscle flexing to me, Christopher Dickey.
Sure, it's muscle flexing, and they're an enormous power. They wanted to be treated like an enormous power, and they're intimidating their neighbors, and I think they're perfectly happy about that. The neighbors aren't, but what are the neighbors going to do? You know, I think one of the stories in Asia is the declining power of Japan. I think that is really the aim of the Chinese, to assert themselves. It doesn't matter if they assert themselves against the Vietnamese, but it doesn't matter if they assert themselves against the Japanese, and that's exactly what they're doing. And the Japanese are having to swallow that in a way they never had to before.
And you had the Filipino foreign minister recently tell the Financial Times he's for the rearmament of Japan.
Well, you know, the Japanese may think about doing that, but they have a critical problem, which is energy. Japan basically has no energy. China has a lot. It's dirty. It's coal. They're now tapping into coal seam gas as well. And as we know, they're buying up energy all over the world, wherever they can find it. That is the key to their moving forward as a power. It's tied directly to their checkbook diplomacy, if you will. Japan doesn't have those resources, and it is going to be suffering. Natural gas in the United States costs 1/8 as much as it does in Japan. And Japan now doesn't even have nuclear energy. It's shutting down its nuclear plants. It isn't going to have electricity the way it used to have. So I think Japan is in big trouble, and that really is a big shift in the Asian field.
If you look at China, though, it may be true that regionally it's flexing its muscles and it does have this checkbook diplomacy, but from a global perspective, what do they do in the UN Security Council? They have actually quite a low profile. They're usually prepared.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, it matters. It matters because if, you know, they could have done something about Libya or Syria or Iran, and they're just prepared to hide behind Russia. The only thing that they care about at the UN is Taiwan and Tibet.
And we'll look more at how China might be changing more domestically than in its foreign policy when we come back. You're watching The World Next Year here on France 24.